It does exactly what it says in the tin isn't just an old advertising slogan. It might as well be a badge of honor in traditional horror. The genre thrives on delivering exactly what's expected. A creeping threat, a mounting body count, a final girl limping to safety. The satisfaction often comes from seeing the rules play out, but what happens when filmmakers stop playing by those rules? Once in a while, a horror movie comes along and rips up the rulebook. You think you know where it's going, then it veers into the bizarre, the bold, or the downright bonkers. Whether it's flipping genre tropes, upending character arcs, or pulling last act rug pulls that leave your jaw on the floor, these films don't just scare, they surprise. Over the last few years, we've seen a wave of horror directors get weird, wild, and wonderfully unpredictable. From haunted houses that aren't quite haunted to villains hiding in plain sight, the following are 10 recent horror films that broke all the rules. Spoiler warning, many of the films below are best experienced blind, but to properly explain how they break the rules, we're going to be diving into some fairly major plot details. You have been warned. I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 recent horror movies that broke all the rules. Number 10, No One Will Save You. Rule break. Who needs dialogue when you have tense set pieces and an involving character arc? No One Will Save You came out of nowhere. A near-silent alien invasion thriller dropped straight onto Hulu with barely any marketing, and the moment it starts, it grabs you. Caitlin Dever plays Bryn, a lonely young woman living in isolation, whose home is suddenly invaded by something not of this world. What follows is a series of escalating, nail-biting set pieces, and not a single line of traditional dialogue. The film doesn't rely on exposition or lore dumps. Instead, it tells its story visually through clever blocking, sound design, and Dever's impressively expressive performance. What seems like a standard aliens in the house flick slowly reveals itself to be about trauma, grief, and emotional exile, while the creature feature framework used as a way to explore one woman's internal world. And it's still scary as hell. There's a moment with a warped, grinning alien clone that's pure nightmare fuel, but it's the final act that really cements this as something special, weird, bold, and quietly heartbreaking. A wordless scream into the void that somehow lands harder than most horror films with full scripts. Number 9, Barbarian. Rule break. Tossed out traditional structure and genre rules in favour of sheer, escalating chaos. From the very first scene, Barbarian wants you uneasy. Zach Cregger's directorial debut leans hard into dread, delivering long silences, uneasy glances, camera angles that linger just a little too long, and that ominous audio that never lets up. You're not quite sure why you're uncomfortable, until the film makes it very clear that you should be. What begins as an awkward Airbnb mix-up spirals into a wild, rule-breaking descent through horror's deepest subgenres, including psychological thriller, torture horror, revenge drama, and full-blown creature feature. There's even a jaw-dropping midpoint shift that ditches the main characters entirely for a whole new protagonist, before stitching everything back together in a way that somehow works. The final act admittedly loses some steam, and there's an odd Hollywood power play metaphor that doesn't quite land, but by then you're strapped in for the ride, with standout turns from Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgård, and Justin Long, not to mention Richard Brake doing what Richard Brake does best, i.e. make your skin crawl. Barbarian is the kind of movie that shatters structure, makes you scream, and leaves you wondering what the hell just happened in the best way possible. Number 8, Infinity Pool. Rule break. Who needs morality when you've got cloning, cults, and total ego death? At first glance, this looks like another rich tourists go wrong horror story. Think The White Lotus with a body count. But Brandon Cronenberg isn't interested in satire so much as full-on psychological annihilation. Infinity Pool follows a struggling writer, played by Alexander Skarsgård, and his wife on holiday at a mysterious resort, where the local justice system lets you clone yourself and watch your double be executed for your crimes, and that's just the start of the nightmare. As the days and identities blur, the film devolves into a sun-soaked freakout of sex, violence, ego death, and straight-up psychedelic madness. Skarsgård is brilliantly broken, but it's Mia Goth who steals the film with a performance so gleefully deranged it practically melts off the screen. What makes this a rule breaker isn't just the premise, it's the tone. There are no clear morals, no sympathetic arcs, and no lesson at the end. Just beautiful people doing horrible things while questioning if they're even real anymore. It's disgusting, hypnotic, and completely its own beast. The unrated cut? Even better. Number 7, Under Paris. Rule break. The monster wins, and the apocalypse is televised. French director Javier Gans is no stranger to breaking horror conventions. His debut, Frontiers, was a relentlessly grim gem of the new French extremity wave, offering zero relief. His underrated apocalyptic thriller The Divide took the classic bunker survival setup and gleefully subverted every trope and emotional connection along the way. So, what's he doing directing a Netflix shark movie set in Paris? Well, Under Paris might sound like a straight-to-streaming disaster and the kind of premise you'd expect from The Asylum, but Gans brings his genre-warping sensibilities to the table. Despite the film's bonkers neo-science explanation for why there's a shark in the Seine, he plays it mostly straight. Sharp direction, tense set pieces, grounded performances, and against all odds, some genuinely eerie moments. But the real jaw-dropper, that ending. The shark wins. Big. It's a bleak twist that throws creature feature logic out the window and dares to end on a city-wide massacre. Yes, the plot veers into goofy territory. There's even a political movement trying to protect the shark. But Under Paris remains a stylish monster movie with surprisingly strong execution, gorgeous cinematography, and just enough self-awareness to make it all work. Mostly. It's not high art, but it's definitely high-grade cheese. Number 6. Pearl. Rule break. It's a Technicolor slasher where you root for the murderer. Ty West has always felt like the underdog of the mid-noughties horror wave. While early work like The House of the Devil hinted at promise, West largely flew under the radar as flashier genre directors either crashed or went corporate. But quietly and patiently, he kept refining his style, honing a gift for authentically recreating specific eras of cinema. That gift is in full, glorious bloom with his X trilogy. While X gave us gritty 70s grindhouse and Maxine leaned into glitzy 80s sleaze, it's Pearl, the unexpected Technicolor prequel, that stands tall as the real masterpiece. Visually, it's closer to The Wizard of Oz than The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but don't let that fool you. In the first 15 minutes, our protagonist slaughters a goose, grinds on a scarecrow, and dreams of stardom while the rot of isolation and mental illness eats her alive. It's all anchored by Mia Goth in a performance that's part Judy Garland, part Norman Bates, all tour de force. And here's the kicker. You kind of root for her. That's the rule breaker. Despite Pearl's increasingly unhinged behaviour, West makes us sympathise, even identify with her delusion. It's a slasher as character study, painted in rich primary colours and dripping with psychological dread, even literally while the credits roll. Number 5. Hellhole. Rule break. Evil wins, and it's jaw-droppingly glorious. The third horror gem in Polish director Bartosz Kowalski's Netflix run, Hellhole might just be his best. A lean, stylish, and nerve-wracking descent into religious terror that flips the script right when you think you've got it figured out. Kowalski's no stranger to upending genre expectations. His Nobody Sleeps in the Wood Tonight sequel controversially turned its final girl into the slasher villain, which was bold, if divisive stuff. Here, he starts with a classic pulp premise, a brooding monastery, creepy monks, and a cop with a dark past investigating whispered occult activity. For most of its runtime, it plays things straight, confidently building atmosphere and unease. Then the third act hits. Without giving too much away, the film's prophecy about the Antichrist's return doesn't unfold the way you'd expect. What begins as slow burn religious horror gets a sudden whiplash in black humour before detonating into an unholy crescendo of cosmic dread, resulting in a final 10 minutes that are at once frightening, baffling, and strangely beautiful, all with a badass practical creature to boot. The ending doesn't offer catharsis, quite the opposite. Evil triumphs, the world ends, and the final image is the kind of stuff that will etch itself inside your brain for weeks. Number 4. Men. Rule break. Turns trauma into myth and every man into the same man, literally. Alex Garland doesn't do straightforward, and Men is probably his most enigmatic, divisive horror yet. On the surface, it starts conventionally enough. A grieving woman, Harper, played with quiet intensity by Jessie Buckley, escapes to a quiet countryside manor following the traumatic death of her husband. But what unfolds is anything but familiar. The men in this sleepy village, all played by Rory Kinnear in increasingly grotesque variations, aren't just creepy, they're symbolic, representing different shades of toxic masculinity and inherited male violence across generations. And Garland doesn't tiptoe around metaphor, he shoves you into it. The final act? It breaks every rule of modern horror storytelling by ditching coherence for body horror surrealism, culminating in an extended, almost comically grotesque birthing sequence that has to be seen to be believed, and even then, good luck explaining it. There's no final chase, no monster reveal, just an eerie, mythological spiral into Harper's inner reckoning. Men isn't here to be easy or traditionally scary. It's here to provoke, unsettle, and dare you to make sense of it. Whether you love it or hate it, you'll definitely have an opinion by the end. Number 3, Talk to Me. Rule break, demonic possession gone viral. Possession horror used to be all about Latin incantations, dusty tomes, and a priest with a drinking problem. Talk to Me flips that on its head. Here, the dead don't need a Ouija board, just a party, a crowd, and a severed embalmed hand. Directed by Aussie twins Danny and Michael Filippo, best known for YouTube chaos, this breakout hit turns the demonic into a dare. Teens take turns gripping the cursed hand, letting spirits inside them for 90 seconds at a time while their friends film and laugh. But what starts as a dark thrill becomes something much uglier fast. One possession goes too far and the fallout is deeply unsettling. The genius of Talk to Me is that it treats possession like addiction, messy, impulsive, and self-inflicted. The kids want the rush, they chase it, and when things go to hell, the damage isn't just supernatural, it's emotional. Grief, guilt, and self-harm spiral into the film's core. It also breaks horror's rules around escalation. There's no exposition dump, no ancient book explaining how to beat the curse. The rules are never obvious because when you're young and grieving, nothing is. Talk to Me ends not with closure, but with a gut punch that lingers long after the credits roll. Possession horror for the TikTok age, and it absolutely wrecks you. Number 2, Skinamarink. Rule break. Who needs a plot when your nightmares finally have a language? Easily one of the most divisive horror films of recent years, and that's exactly the point. Skinamarink isn't interested in telling you a story. It wants to trap you inside a memory you're not sure you had and leave you there. No jump scares, no killer, just dread. Set in a dimly lit house where 2 children wake up to find their father missing and the doors, windows, and reality itself beginning to disappear, the film drifts through static shots of ceilings, shadows, old cartoons, and flickering lights. Dialogue is barely audible, faces are rarely shown. It's more like a haunted VHS tape than a conventional movie. What makes it rule-breaking isn't just its lo-fi aesthetic or glacial pacing, it's the total abandonment of clarity. It operates entirely on vibe. You don't watch Skinamarink so much as you sink into it, like slipping into sleep paralysis. For some viewers, it's nonsense. For others, it's the purest rendering of childhood fear ever put to film. It feels like being 4 years old again, calling out in the dark, and no one comes. Number 1, Heretic. Rule break. Who needs jump scares when theology can be terrifying? You know a film is doing something different when Hugh Grant is the most unsettling thing on screen, and not because he's cracking jokes. In Heretic, he plays Mr. Reed, a mysterious recluse who welcomes 2 young Mormon missionaries into his home and then locks the door. What follows isn't your typical religious horror. There's no demon, no exorcism, no third-act bloodbath. Instead, directors Scott Beck and Brian Woods craft a slow-burning three-hander where most of the horror comes from talking. The tension builds through philosophical debates, moral traps, and psychological games. Grant is magnetic and quietly menacing, delivering Bible verses like threats and turning theological doubt into a weapon. It breaks the rules by stripping away the genre's crutches. No loud bangs, no ghostly figures, no overblown score. The fear creeps in through silence, implication, and the uncomfortable recognition that this man might be right, or something worse entirely. In an era of franchise fatigue and formulaic horror, Heretic stands out as something rare, intimate, unpredictable, and deeply unnerving. Proof that when done right, a conversation can be scarier than any monster.